Welcome back to Consider This. I'm Sharaad Kuttan. With me, Father Gerard Theraviam, who is Parish Priest with the Church of Divine Mercy at Shah Alam. I wanted to ask you about the idea of moral leadership. We are, in kind of Malaysia Baru, and I know it's almost 2 years into Malaysia Baru, there's a lot of talk about political leadership. But what does moral leadership mean? And I sometimes think that we mistake religious figures or people who use the religion as an idiom when talking about politics as that kind of moral leadership. But could moral leadership be something other than that? Could it be something about grappling with the difficult trade-offs or the idea of consequences of our actions and so on and so forth? What does morality even mean beyond, the do's and don'ts?
Yeah, certainly it's not just about the thou shalt nots. Very often that's how often religion is portrayed as, and rather negatively actually. I think if we recognize that thou shall be a person of peace, of justice, of truth, of love, of joy, those are values that I think we all would share. And we would all probably be able to look into our religious traditions and find the reason why we should be all of these things and more. So I think the danger, I think religious leaders, and I am one, are important. We're there, part of that. But I think each person also has to look within and to recognize that God also leads us individually. And we need to discern the voice of God wherever God is leading each one individually as well.
Well, so in practical terms, right? And I think, do your congregants come to you to help them solve the practical problems that they face? Or when they're trying to weigh up the issues of a national level or even global ones, say for climate change being one of them, do they come to you? Are they asking you for leadership or asking you to help discern what the divine plan might be?
Yes, individually, an individual might come to me and say, hey, look, this is what's happening in my life. What do I do? And I'm not going to tell them what to do. I'm going to perhaps ask the right questions and perhaps prod them to think in a different way, that ultimately they will realize for themselves what is it that they are finding themselves called to do. Because otherwise the danger can be I'm seen as the guru that has all the answers, and I don't have the answers, because ultimately the individual has to know where God is leading them. But on a bigger scale as well, there are some things that, you talked of climate change. We've got, the Pope's come out with this encyclical Laudato Si, and, in the local church we have been spending, this is the second year in a series of 3 years that we are spending to push that idea of environmental change, and what are we doing as individuals, as communities, and beyond our own community to work with people of goodwill as to how we can, preserve or take back what we've lost actually, in terms of recognizing that we are called to be we're not owners of it all. We are called to look after the earth.
Right, stewards, I think is
stewards. Yeah, stewards is the word I was looking for. Right, thanks.
Yeah, I want to ask you about this though. It seems to me sometimes the impulse that people have is to look for certainties, right? They want moral leadership in terms of the pronouncements of certain certainties. What you're presenting to me now is an idea of an engagement, which isn't full of certainties, or that is about putting the moral responsibility on the person asking the question to make that decision. Is that something that goes down well with your congregation? They think, we pay you the big bucks.
Well,
Father
they don't
Gerard,
pay me the big bucks. They don't pay me the big bucks. But I will say this: it's very easy to get answers from somebody else. But you've got to take personal responsibility for your life. I'm not there to tell you what you want to do or what you need to do. I'm there perhaps to bring maybe the faith dimension, into those questions that you might be asking and saying, hey, have you considered this in the light of scriptures, in the light of what's happening around you? Would you consider this,
Would you consider this? In fact, this is precisely the show for us to consider. Is there a shift? Was the church always like this? Was it always so open did it have this kind of thinking and approach always?
No, I think, much earlier we would have been quite black or white, or black and white. There was sort of a certainty of where you were going, and this is what you should do, and, keep the rules and the rules will keep you. But I think today we are recognizing that personal responsibility is very important, and that needs to permeate all of us, and so quick answer to this, no, the church hasn't been like that always. But today I think more and more we're being invited to see where is God asking us as individuals, as communities, as churches, as a nation even, how are we going to respond to situations that are happening in our lives? And there are new situations that are arising all the time. So what is it that I'm called to do? I mean, there are no rule books for new things that, we might be able to pick up some things, but not necessarily so.
And I wonder about this also, because it seems that people perhaps look at religion today more like a supermarket of possibilities, right? So they can pick and choose. They might be born into a tradition, but they don't have to remain in it. There are very few, perhaps, social sanctions to when you do leave, right, and you choose another religion. Is there pressure? Because there are obviously Christian traditions where this kind of openness is not necessarily the norm, and people go and somebody's willing to give or peddle certainties. Do you ever feel the pressure to kind of deal with that? Those churches that might be out there saying, we know the truth, and I'll tell you exactly what you should do, and this is how to do it, 1, 2, 3, and you'll get to heaven.
I believe in the truth. I'm not going to sell something that is not something that I'm not convinced of. Okay, so I'm going to point you the way, but I'm not going to say this is the way and this is the only way, that you need to do. You need to do, get to wherever you need to get to. I think to push certainties onto people's. Of course, there are certain things that, as church, as religions, we will point to things. But when it comes to individual lives and how we apply things to our lives, we have also got to look at our situations and what's happening in there. I think, the reality is that, we're far more complex than just to say, step 1, step 2, step 3, no.
Right. I mean, to be fair to all sides, I mean, liberals like myself and secular-minded people like myself also have our certainties, and perhaps sometimes we don't embrace doubt. And I wonder if you could just speak to the issue of doubt. And how does doubt play a role in the life of somebody who's religious? Is it bad to have doubts?
I don't think it's bad to have doubts. I think the reality is that we will always have a certain amount of doubt. But I hope there's the same amount of hope and trust, I don't know what's going to happen to me tomorrow. I don't, And so there are doubts that can come negatively into my thinking. But the thing I also have to do is that I know God is in control, And if He's in control, then I'm okay, because He's going to look after whatever it is. It might be that it's not going to be an easy way for me. I mean, God being in control doesn't mean it's going to be very easy or, the path is going to be smooth. It may be that I may have to take the path that's less, normal, the path less taken, but God will be there to give us strength, courage along the way.
Okay. And now let's take a short break. We'll be back with Consider This.